Well, we have arrived at the new, rebuilt, reconditioned, redesigned visitor center at Antietam National Battlefield Park. Doesn't look much different than I remember it from the old one, but it's expanded somewhat, I think. They probably improved the climate control system. Let's go in. Antietam was the bloodiest day in American military history to that time. 23,000. Here's a map of where the casualties were suffered, from the opening of the battle on the north at the cornfield and the West Woods to the Bloody Lane, down to Burnside Bridge and the final attack. It's a very good graphic display. The view from the back side of the visitor center on this prominent piece of ground is amazing. You can scan all the way around from the Dunker Church on the far left flank of the Confederates, across the cornfield in the distance. There's the Maryland Memorial, the green copper roof in the background there. Scanning around. Antietam Creek is in the low ground in the mid-distance, out of sight. Civil War era farms are still on the site where they were at the time of the battle. All the way around. And in the distance you can see the observation tower at the top, the south end of the sunken lane, or the Bloody Lane, in the Confederate center. And the Sharpsburg and the Confederate right flank is out of sight in the trees behind the visitor center in the distance. This is just a great viewpoint, vantage point. And there's South Mountain in the background, where the battle was fought a few days before. The rear guard held against Union onslaught, gave Lee time to consolidate his army here around Sharpsburg rather than be defeated in detail, as McClellan had planned. It's all in the video that we purchased, and a shorter version of that is in the theater. It's a wonderful film. I highly recommend it. Okay, we're going to drive around and see some of the key points. We're on the southern edge of the famous bloody Miller's Cornfield, scene of the opening fights in the early morning of September the 17th, 1862, where Hooker's First Corps advanced from south to north and reached this limit before they struck the Confederates, shattering the Georgians. Hood's division counterattacked. Hood's brigade, his old brigade, the Texas Brigade, attacked across those fields and drove the Union back into the cornfield, where they were stopped by their own casualties and Gibbon's artillery that we just drove past, among others. There it is, Battery B, 4th U.S. This is, oh, there's the gun. There's one gun. There's the marker, and here's the gun. Oh. But then the field was advanced over several times from different directions. So at the end of the day, there wasn't much corn left standing. This was the beginning of the bloodiest battle, I think, ever fought, except for Gettysburg, on American soil. Definitely the bloodiest single day in American history up to that time. Okay, let's move on to the next bloody site, Sunken Lane. Here we are at the Sunken Lane. Looking up toward the observation tower at the head of the lane. You can see the short range to where the Union troops advancing on this position exposed themselves to the fire from this natural trench. looking down northwards, and what's left of the traces of Bloody Lane, the sunken lane where the Confederate center was anchored. You can see how close the Union troops would have been when they exposed themselves over the rise. That's maybe 40 feet beyond the fence. And the inverted cannon, a symbol of a fallen general officer, this one to Major General Israel B. Richardson, commanding the division that the Irish Brigade was in. There's all the plaques with the narratives for the U.S. and Confederate units that were engaged, from the Army down to, well, this is actually a narrative of the whole battle between the two armies. Army of Northern Virginia. Okay, here's the monument to the Irish Brigade, commanded by Thomas Marr. Granite came from Ireland. Fitting. It's the observation tower, so you can climb if you want to. And there's the narrative plaques for the Army of the Potomac, which after the Battle of Antietam, Lincoln styled as McClellan's bodyguard. This is looking down from the Confederate position above Antietam Creek, looking down on the lower bridge, which would forever after be known as Burnside's Bridge, toward Burnside's 9th Army Corps, which happened to outnumber the 500 Georgians under Toombs by 10-1. I'll let you read about it for yourself because it's just a tragic comedy. 500 Georgians under Robert Toombs held off 5,200 Union troops in the 9th Corps under Major General Burnside for most of the day, until they finally found a ford farther downstream and came across and flanked him out of there. The key thing here is that this was the extreme right flank of the Army of Northern Virginia, and late in the afternoon, when this bridge was finally seized, Lee had no reserves to put in. His whole army had been fought out, and it was just a nick of time that A.P. Hill's division arrived on the scene as Lee's right flank was about to collapse, coming from Harper's Ferry, where they had been left behind to accept the surrender and collect all the treasure from the capture of Harper's Ferry. Okay, well, with that, we're gonna head back to camp. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something from it, and take some time to look at other videos that we've done. See you on the road.